Okay, so if you've watched the show with me for any amount of time, you know that one of the cliches about me is that I am not, for the most part, a fan of modern comedy. I'm saying for the most part because there have been a few that have come down the pike that I have really enjoyed, but for the most part, they just don't click with me. I've made the argument, the primary argument, that for, again, the most part, they are films that star absolutely horrible characters. You know, and the thing is that most of those films are not about the person overcoming their horribleness or learning to put it behind them. They have to embrace it because they're going to make those squares learn. You know, they're going to show you, nerd, kind of thing. Again, this is my opinion. If you like them, then you like them. No problem with that. You know, I like basketball, for God's sakes. But, yeah, for the most part, modern comedies and I just don't click. And I think an excellent example of this is when you look at the steady decline of the genre of romantic comedy. I think in the past couple years, that whole genre has given up trying to give us stories about characters who actually feel emotions and just keep giving us these wretched people who have no business being anywhere near each other, let alone falling in love. You know, they seem afraid to actually tackle and deal with legitimate human emotion. And that's in a romantic comedy. A comedy about romance, about love. The emotion that artists have loved to talk about since the beginning of time. But they seem afraid of it. They can't let these characters actually be vulnerable or actually have feelings or issues. No, they've got to be ratcheted up to be the biggest cliches about someone who has feelings as you can possibly get. Remember a few years back when they were trying to convince us Katherine Heigl was a thing, and she did that 27 Dresses movie, and in that movie, her sister was a complete self-centered bitch, no redeeming qualities, just self-centered bitch turned up to 11. The guy she was in love with was a perfect, flawless human being to the point of parody. She herself was a neurotic character, because you gotta love those neurotics. Oh my goodness, Diane Keaton, look out. And the guy she ends up falling in love with is a complete shithead who mocks her and her entire way of life. And yet somehow we're supposed to go, oh, these people are in love now. I don't know when we became afraid of actual emotions. And more so when we lost the ability to understand that you can have a comedy, a movie that's funny, a movie with great lines and over-the-top characters and whatnot, but still deal with real human emotion and connection. I'm not sure when that happened, but I tend to think it happened towards the end of the 90s, going in, when 90s cynicism really started to kick in, and then segue into millennium cynicism. And there for a little while in the early 90s, we were okay. We were doing all right. And I think you can see that in one of the last great romantic comedies, and that's 1995's While You Were Sleeping. A movie that has a lot of the cliches of the typical romantic comedy, but for some reason is still really warm, really endearing, really funny, whereas many of the films that followed it have failed. So why is that? What does this movie do differently that the films of, the last couple years haven't? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, let's talk about the story. So as we know, one of the cliches of any romantic comedy is it's got to have some kind of crazy hook. There's got to be some bizarre way to get these people together or to put them in the situation. So what is the hook here? Well, our main character, Lucy, as played by Sandra Bullock, is a person who is incredibly lonely. She's lost her family. Her mother died when she was young. Her father died a year before the events of the film take place. She has taken a very isolating job as a, I don't know what they call them, tellers, I guess, at the Chicago monorail. So there's always, symbolism. There's always a sheet of glass between her and other people, so no connections. And she kind of begins to fantasize about this guy she sees coming and taking the train every day, played by Peter Gallagher. She's never talked to him, but, he's handsome and all this. He has two creatures living in his eyebrows that control his thoughts. And, he's just a dreamboat. Well, one day, she sees him being mugged, and he falls onto the tracks just as the train is coming. She jumps in, saves him, but he ends up in a coma. At the hospital, somebody mistakes her for his fiancée. This is compounded when his family arrives and they mistake her for his fiancée. And despite her attempting to tell them, no, I am not, she just never can get it out. This is made even worse when Peter Gallagher's brother, as played by Bill Pullman, arrives, and he has doubts as to her being his brother's fiancée. And through trying to figure out the truth, lo and behold, he ends up falling in love with her and she with him too. Hence the wacky dilemmas that ensue during said situation. So, you've got many of the cliches checked off. You have the gimmick. You have the over-the-top characters in the family. You have the lonely person who has kind of given up on having human relationships. You have the person they're supposed to be in love with, but for some reason have never gotten with. And you have the real love interest who is going to be the person our hero has always dreamed of. All the cliches of a romantic comedy. So where does this movie succeed where others that came after it failed? Well, let's look at these things kind of in no particular order. Let's start with the hero, our protagonist, the person who has kind of given up hope of ever finding love or happiness. So Sandra Bullock's character is allowed to feel real emotions, okay? We are not just told, oh, she's really sad, oh, she's really lonely, oh, she misses somebody. We get to see her actually dealing with those losses and that grief. It's become kind of the defining nature of her worldview. She is someone who is resigned to her fate. We see that early on, that she has kind of checked out. She's not necessarily miserable, she's not slitting her wrist, but she's not what we would consider happy. Okay? And I think a lot of this has to go to the excellent performance by Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock is, first of all, a very good actor. Always has been. And you can see that in the sheer variety of films that she's done and how she uses her unique brand to fit into each one of those different films. I think she's perfect for a role like this. She's an attractive woman, but not glamorous. This isn't a case of take off her glasses and let her ponytail down and suddenly she's the prom queen. She's a little plain. And this is not a criticism. She's approachable. She's normal. She feels like a person you would see or bump into. And thus, you feel she fits in this role and in this world and in this character. She's not a glamorous character. There's never a beautification montage where she puts on a dress and suddenly, oh my God, she's the belle of the ball. You know, she's always in a bit of frumpy clothing, more comfortable wear, you know, boots, you know. She's a normal person, and I don't think a lot of other actors of that time would have fit that mold so well. But Sandra Bullock does. She also infuses her character with a lot of genuine connection, genuine emotion. You really feel it. You feel for her and her situation, not just the situation she's in when the movie begins, but the bizarre sitcom Three's Company-esque situation she finds herself in when this accident occurs. You understand why she hasn't told them. You know, why she is keeping the facade up. You know? It makes not only sense plot-wise, but character-wise. A lot of romantic comedies need the characters to be turned up to 1,000. You know, they don't. It doesn't seem like a lot of supporting characters in a romantic comedy are ever grounded. They're just really whatever their emotions are. They're commedia characters. Whatever their primary function in the script is, that is what they are, and that is what they do. Here, though, those characters fall to the family of Peter Gallagher and Bill Pullman. You know, their parents, their younger sister, their grandmother, their family friend who is like a member of the family. These are all larger characters, but they are large within the reality that they are in. They're a family. And as you take it from Sandra Bullock's character being the point of view character, the one we are supposed to see the world through, yes, they do come off a bit loud, a bit crazy, a bit bombastic, but never in an unbelievable way. As she settles into the world, we settle into the world. Okay? And we see that they are not a family of clowns, as they are originally kind of portrayed in the first couple scenes. You feel the love between them. You feel the connection. You feel the genuine emotion. That thing we're so afraid of these days. You have, of course, the actual love interest, the person who's supposed to come into the person's life, and of course, at first they don't trust each other or don't like each other, but oh ho ho, their light shines in the darkest of places, and love will not be denied. Now, again, in modern romantic comedies, that person is usually an asshole. A big asshole. Who spends the entire film pointing out all the flaws or sarcastically taking our hero down a peg. Bill Pullman is not like that. His suspicion is based more on her relationship to his brother. He's not out to get her. He's not out to cut her down. He's not out to be cruel to her, as so many of these characters can be. He's suspicious of her, but he's not mean. And again, I think this is where the casting of Bill Pullman really works. Bill Pullman, like Sandra Bullock, is a much better actor than anybody ever gives him credit for. He's always a supporting role. He's always the other guy. He's always the Bill Pullman. You know, I like to play a game where I pretend his character in this movie is actually his character from Sleepless in Seattle several years later, so he can actually get the girl. This is who he usually plays. The supporting guy. And it's nice to see him actually up being the guy who gets the girl this time. And he gets the girl through conversation, through getting to know her, through talking to her. They do a whole extended scene. It is a great scene with the two of them just walking and talking. The jokes are funny little things you'd say on a first date, or nervous things that you'd say to someone you like. You know, that's where the humor comes in. They're not, insulting each other left, right, and center. They're having an actual conversation about who they are, who they want, what their dreams are. Genuine fucking emotion. I can't stress that enough. You can play a drinking game with a number of times that I've said genuine emotion, but that's the thing that strikes me when I watch this movie. And I think one of the reasons maybe why it hasn't been remembered as much as some of the ones that it was in the class with, or some of the ones that have come later, is because, again, we've become afraid of that. We don't trust genuine emotion. There's got to be something more sinister behind it. And this film is optimistic and says, no, people are generally good. And, when you fall in love with someone, you fall in love with someone because they understand you and they get you. All of you, good, bad, and ugly. Okay? And I think that's what the movie does exceptionally well. It's a warm movie. I forgot until I rewatched it that it took place at Christmas. Christmas and into New Year's. And here's my question. Why is this film not considered a Christmas classic? Why aren't we watching this, every year around the holidays? If we go off on a tangent about how fucking Die Hard is a Christmas movie, this one at least, deals with families and coming together. It's very warm and loving. You really feel like this movie's a blanket you can kind of wrap yourself up in and just kind of feel happy for a little bit. Unironically happy. Is it perfect? No, it isn't. I love the casting of Bill Pullman, and I think he and Sandra Bullock had really genuine chemistry together. One of the things I love about this movie is it's good to see two actors who are just being actors and playing off each other. It's not Sandra Bullock playing Sandra Bullock, and Bill Pullman, he never really does that, but you know what I mean. We're in these characters and we're bouncing off each other. Our energy is working off each other. They have real, genuine chemistry. And I really appreciate that about the film. Here's the thing, though, minor. The character they came up with for Bill Pullman is not what I would usually associate Bill Pullman with playing. He is a little bit more in that realm of the romantic comedy Benedict. He is a little bit more, I don't want to say sarcastic, or I don't know what the right word is, mistrusting. And Bill Pullman just, to me, always feels trusting. Just the aura of him as a performer, you get that feeling, you're like, oh man, this guy's lovely. I trust him to fight fucking aliens. I trust him. And playing kind of a more mistrustful character, I don't know. He does a great job, but there are times, for me at least, when the character doesn't seem like his type of character. That's a stupid argument. Doesn't ruin the movie at all. I know someone's going to be real mad at me for saying this. I mentioned before about romantic comedies, and one of the cliches of them being the bigger-than-life supporting characters, the more cartoonish supporting characters, and I mentioned the family and how they fit that mold, but they expand out of it. That is not the case for one of the other characters in this. One of Sandra Bullock's neighbors who's constantly hitting on her, a guy named Joe Jr. And the guy is just doing the most annoying Italian, what's the matter for you? Hey, how you doing? Stereotype character, and he is like nails on a fucking chalkboard to me. He is too cartoony for the world they create. They ground the world very, very well in a realism, a slightly heightened realism, but a realism. And then you get this guy come, I got 2 tickets to the Ice Capades. I know the guy. Hey, why you stand me up? It's like, Jesus Christ. You know, she locks him in a closet at one point. For some reason, she opens it up and he's trying her shoes on. And you're like, okay, is this going to come out that he's actually gay or a cross-dresser? Which, it's good that they didn't, because in 95, they wouldn't have handled that well. So, at least not in most cases. But it's like, why? Other than it's something wacky he can do. Now, I will say this. Towards the end of the film, he grew on me. Because they did give him an excellent moment at the end when, the all is lost moment happens and the inevitable kind of comes to pass, and Lucy is sad, and he comes and knocks on the door and he tells her, hey, that guy, he wasn't good enough for you, and you deserve better. And he's actually being really nice to her. And then again, genuine. Take another drink. I know you're all at home drinking. It's all anybody seems to be doing. But he won me over. But for the majority of the film, he is just too cartoony for the rules of the world that they created. For me, I know other people love him, fine and dandy. He doesn't ruin the film, and like I said, I did come around to him towards the end. But it's one of those things I've always said, that when you have a film where all the characters fit into one mold and they fit into it so well, when you have a character who does not fit that mold and is so extremely outside that mold, it stands out a lot more. And it stands out a lot more here. So, but minor. All in all, I think this is an emotion, god damn it. All in all, I think this is a film that is not afraid of emotions. It's not afraid to make its characters vulnerable. It is not afraid to show them and how sad they are, or how lost they are, or explain to us why these two characters are falling in love in the first place. Because a lot of comedies don't do that. It's, hi, we're in love now because we're supposed to be, even though we've spent absolutely no time being in love. It's one of the last great ones, in my opinion. And I think definitely one that's worth a rewatch. So, you got the time, go check it out. So, that's it for me here today. Hope you're all doing well. As always, keep calm and carry on, and drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.